Hello and welcome to the senior capstone final project presentation. I am Johnny Bluhm.
I'm Neil Borde.
I'm Joshua Hamel.
I'm Liam McCarthy.
I'm Valyria McFarland.
And I'm Robert Sarno.
Welcome. Go ahead, Neil. Tell us a little bit about the organization.
So FullContact is an organization that focuses on identity resolution. So they allow customers to basically map fragments of people's identities into like persistent person IDs using identity graph. And this allows for customer uses like targeted advertising and marketing campaigns so that customer marketing dollars are spent more effectively. And customer data is always secure and it's never like intermingled with FullContact's identity graph. So FullContact's identity layer can be embedded securely across the customer's business.
Next slide, please.
Thank you, Johnny. So really the problem that we're looking at is when really dealing with something that has to do with data is there's so much of it. And for this identity-based graph that we're dealing with, there's a full data pipeline. And what I mean by full data pipeline is there's multiple functions that kind of outputs the data into different formats. And so when you're dealing with that, it really means just incredibly complex. It's if you try to follow this data organically, it's nearly impossible to really try to figure out what is going on. And so kind of when you put this all together with it's incredibly hard to track the data, really the problem is if somebody ever has to troubleshoot an issue that has to do with any of the functions in the identity-based graph, it's incredibly hard to follow and incredibly hard to fix. And it really just takes a very long time for developers to figure out a simple solution to a simple problem.
Thank you, Josh. So for our solution, how we decided to go about this is we would create, and being that the identity-based graph is so complex and takes so long, we decided to create EMR clusters. And with those EMR clusters, you're able to store your results within S3, which uses Glue to automatically create these tables, which because it's so complex, it's very hard to read. So these tables are able to display it onto a UI that's in a nicer format and more readable, making it nicer for the user and just better understanding and problem solving.
So here is our architecture diagram for the tool that we made. We have a UI, and you can also access our tool via the command line. Both will send requests to our backend API, which we made from Flask, and which also uses Python's Photo3 library to make the AWS service calls. So what would happen is a user would create an EMR cluster and specify what Spark jobs they'd want from Identibase and filter those based on a vertex ID from the graph. And then once those jobs would finish on the EMR cluster, the output would be written to S3, and a crawler would pick up that data and write it to our Athena database. From there, the users can then see those results and any other previous results.
So success, and thankfully we did have some of that with this project. We were able to hand off a deliverable that FullContact can use and iterate upon in the future, and they can use that to better sort through the data and find out any problems that might be happening with the data in the database. And we were able to create a product that achieved what they had envisioned for this project. But there was a sizable learning curve at the beginning of it. But our team was able to figure it out and overcome that, and be able to deliver a product that I think we're all proud of, and thankfully works.
Gotcha, and lessons learned. So the first big lesson that we all learned was imposter syndrome, get over it. Now this was something we all actually struggled with, but myself in particular, Like during the beginning of the project, I was quite clueless. I had no idea what we were doing, no idea what technologies, or I just literally had no idea what was going on. And I started to really think, yep, I am in the wrong career field. This is not for me. Everyone else seems to get it. I'm the only one that doesn't get it. Clearly, though, this was not the case. My other team members said that they felt the same way, that we were all just a little bit clueless on what was happening. But because everyone was afraid of looking like an imposter, oh, you're dumb because you asked a question. Nobody would ask questions. We had no discussions about anything. So like the first bunch of meetings were just pure silence for the most part. But once we finally got over this fear of, I'm going to be laughed at because I asked the question, we really started to have some good discussions and were able to start solving some of these problems. Another lesson we learned was that treat work as a learning opportunity. You know, many times we're doing work that we kind of don't want to do, or we have other deadlines and stuff, and it can be stressful. But we found that as long as, you know, let's treat this work, what can we learn today? We found that it was much more enjoyable and much more productive, actually. And the last lesson we learned is that well-defined goals are important. So we actually had 2 sponsors for this project. The first sponsor just had a very overview, like, great guys, we're just gonna start working. No real specific tasks or goals. We then changed sponsor, and he gave us these specific tasks, like we want an accordion display. We were actually able to start working once we had these clear, well-defined goals or tasks to complete. So we definitely noticed that that is huge and very important to a team's success on a project. But there you go. That was the senior capstone project. Thank you all for listening, and best of luck.